His career in television at WTVJ in December 1969. His first on-air report aired in early January of 1970.
I shot Ike Seamans' very first stand-up, the first time he was ever on the air.
Are on a fact-finding mission.
Soon after, Ike became the station's first Palm Beach bureau chief.
We were opening up just for Ike. He was the only person there, a Palm Beach County bureau.
Within his first month in the business, Ike was on the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite with a story about deer dying in the Everglades. He broke so many major stories that he was soon brought back to Miami. Ike immediately became a top-ranking WTVJ reporter. At a time when local stations didn't get on the networks much and TV news was still in its infancy, he was getting major stories on CBS up to 90 times a year.
When Ike and I first got together, he was working for WTVJ and I was a news executive at CBS News, and Ike was always selling stories to the network to get on the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
We first together at WTVJ back in 1978, and my image of Ike is this man constantly running around trying to feed the network.
Ike has reported on many big stories, but the one he's most proud of and the one that had a tremendous impact on South Florida was in 1976 when he became the first local reporter, print or television, to get into Cuba. In 1960, Castro had barred all Miami journalists.
Inside the cathedral here in San Salvador, thousands...
In 1979, Ike was chosen to be a network correspondent for NBC based at their Miami bureau, covering Florida, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. He immediately became a war correspondent, covering civil wars in Nicaragua, El Salvador, and other Central American countries.
Sandinista Radio has been reporting it wants troops to come to Managua. Ike Seamans, NBC News, Managua.
It was in Miami that Ike and Don Brown, after working together over the phone for several years, started working side by side.
The thing that I connected on right away was that we're both very passionate people, and Ike had an absolute, intense, beautiful passion for journalism, and an enthusiasm and a competitive spirit and a curiosity that was unmatched by anybody I had ever come in touch with.
When Ike Seamans and I worked together at the NBC Bureau in Miami, there was only one thing that was as important for filing for nightly news and for the Today Show, and that was filing for radio. We had a friendly competition, we did. If I filed 50, though, I would file 60 times a month. If I filed 60, he'd figure out a way to file 70.
But Ike's big break was going to Iran to cover the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis for NBC. He also covered the Falklands War in Argentina. In 1982, Ike became a foreign correspondent based in Rome and realized his lifelong dream of living abroad. While he occasionally reported from Italy, he primarily used Rome as a jumping-off point to cover Middle East wars and the rest of the world.
Ike Seamans, NBC News, Beirut.
War reporting from Beirut and Israel was definitely a career highlight. During his career, Ike has covered stories from more than 70 countries.
But some residents claim they're worse.
No matter what Gorbachev does,
Ike Seamans, NBC News, Jerusalem.
I think Ike Seamans has dodged bullets in more places in the world than just about anyone that I know for sure.
And although Ike has always been known as a serious journalist, he's had his lighter moments.
Hello, little boy. You can get away with it once or twice, but that's about all. So, don't be a dummy. Oh, no offense, dear.
In 1985, Ike returned to Miami to try his hand at management as assistant bureau chief. Later, he was promoted to NBC bureau chief and correspondent in Israel, then bureau chief and correspondent in Moscow. Both bureaus won overseas press club awards. Israel for the Palestinian uprising, the Intifada, for the fall of communism. Ike returned to WTVJ in the mid-90s as senior correspondent specializing in investigative reports. And true to his news hound roots, Ike is always after the big story.
I've watched Ike's career for decades. I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's very interesting watching him as a local reporter at WTVJ, being one of the best reporters in the country, working with him as a general assignment reporter at the NBC News Bureau in Miami, and watching him report all around the world. But what is really interesting, coming totally full circle, Ike Seamans today, as a senior correspondent at WTVJ, is doing the best work of his career.
In recent years, Ike broke major stories, like the cause of the value jet crash in the Everglades and poor security at Miami International Airport, a story that led to the resignation of the security director. Last November, he filed the first U.S. television story, network or local, on a worldwide spy system, Echelon.
Who controls this super secret surveillance system?
And most recently traveled to Colombia to do the first story on South Florida's newest immigration crisis. Ike has also done several documentaries, including his most recent, Mission Holy Land, Renewing Faith, which was a return to Israel.
I got to tell you that there aren't a whole lot of people who, when they were having a heart attack on the air, A, would continue, and B, would ask the photographer to follow him to the hospital to then make a story out of the heart attack he was having.
The nickname he earned, Ike News is My Life Seamans, was appropriate then as it is appropriate today.
In his spare time, Ike also writes opinion pieces for the Miami Herald and book reviews for newspapers and magazines. After more than 3 decades in the business, Ike is working longer hours and covering more complex stories than ever. What's next for Ike?
And if I'm ever out of a job, well, at least I know where I can get another one. There you are. Is everything satisfactory?
Just fine.
Congratulations, Ike.
Ike, congratulations.
Congratulations, Ike.
No one deserves it more than Ike Seamans.
Ike Seamans, NBC6.